Hmm. Hmm. Everything is fine. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm DSP. I've been a content creator in the realm of gaming for 17 years here on YouTube. And today I made the decision, after 9 hours of gameplay, to stop playing Assassin's Creed Shadows. Now, what I'd like to do in this video is explain to you exactly what happened. But to do that, I basically need to recap what's been going on with the games industry and Assassin's Creed as a whole. Assassin's Creed Shadows already had a whole bunch of problems way before it ever released, notably the fact that the protagonists of the game were not necessarily representative of Japanese culture during the time frame that the game takes place. You know, having a black samurai and a female shinobi as your co-protagonist already caused shockwaves of controversy throughout the gaming landscape, even before anyone had ever picked up a controller to see how it played. But I'm here to tell you folks that I put all of that aside. I didn't care about the protagonists or any of that. What I wanted to do is I wanted to actually play this game fairly and judge it for its own merits. I've played Assassin's Creed Shadows without caring about all of that controversy and politics and all of that woke stuff that everyone's complaining about. But instead, I just wanted to judge it on its own merits like I usually do with every other game. Now, for the record, I have played every single major Assassin's Creed game since Part 2 came out, all the way through Mirage, as a YouTuber. And you can find those playthroughs on my DSPGaming channel or on my very old Dark Side Phil archive channel to watch right now. So I've got the credibility to back me up when I tell you that I wholeheartedly feel that Assassin's Creed Shadows is actually the worst Assassin's Creed game that Ubisoft has ever pumped out in this series. I cannot believe that they thought that this was a good idea. I can't believe the choices that they made. And I'm going to tell you why in 9 hours I couldn't stomach anymore and I'm quitting this game. I think the problem with modern game development is thus: all of these major AAA studios are far more focused on quantity over quality. When they want to sell a game for $69.99 or however it may be in your country, I live in the United States, these game developers are worried about everyone saying their game is a ripoff. So what they do is they wedge in incredible amounts of content, whether that be open world roaming, side questing, grinding, resource management, or whatever it may be, to pad the length of their games. And when this happens, inevitably, a couple things do occur. Number one, corners are cut. Because if the game is longer and has more content, then you can't focus in on the little nuanced parts that would make it feel special. How are you going to make every cutscene look amazing if you're worried about pushing 40 extra hours of side content? And number two, these games start to feel bloated, meaning maybe if the game didn't have all of this content wedged in and you could streamline it and have a really awesome 20-hour experience, that 20 hours would be much better than, say, a 40 to 60-hour experience where 30 to 40 hours feel completely uninteresting, unimportant, repetitive, dare I say, boring. And this is a major symptom in the games industry today. How many games can you think of in the last 5 years that were from a AAA studio that claimed that they were this certain length? But when you pick up the controller, you realize they're talking about meaningless side content and things that you have to do just like a menial task repetitively that really isn't fun or notable. When you think about a video game and what you play and what you're experiencing in it, and what are you going to remember? Are you going to remember the 14th base you take over, the 100th enemy that you slaughter, or are you going to remember that meaningful moment in the story, or when there was an epic boss fight that wasn't one of a zillion that stood out? Exactly. I rest my case there. The problem is modern games just don't have enough of those moments. Instead, it's the repetitive crap. And when it comes to Assassin's Creed Shadows, this game is probably one of the most guilty of this that I have seen in modern gaming, which is why I quit it. But first, allow me to explain my initial experiences with this game. The opening hours of Assassin's Creed Shadows are interesting. Now, for reference, I played it on the PlayStation 5 Pro. I do have a gaming PC, but in this case, someone had opted. They really wanted to see me play it on the PS5 Pro, and they actually bought it for me. I didn't ask for it. They just donated it, and I said, all right, I guess I'll play it on there. So on the PS5 Pro, right from the get-go, as the game starts, there's a jarring thing going on. The cutscenes seem very plastic, very stoic. The characters, as they're talking in the cutscenes, just seem to stand completely still and barely move their heads as they talk at the camera, just like this. Instead of being animated and feeling natural and moving and breathing and flowing, they just stand there like mannequins. And this is persistent throughout the entire game. Whatever reason, they didn't animate much of anything in the cutscenes. Of course, with a game like this, there's tons of them, and it stands out when everyone seems like they're terrified and frozen, like it was a game of freeze tag during the story events. I just don't understand why they thought this would be passable in a modern major AAA experience. But in addition, for some odd reason, all of the cutscenes animate at 30 frames per second rather than 60 or higher, which is obviously what you're aiming for on the PS5 Pro, and they seem to have less visual effects. Like when I was playing the actual game, walking around the areas and experiencing the lighting and the detail, it just seemed like it was next gen. And then as soon as I went to a cutscene, it looks like you're playing on PlayStation 4. If you don't believe me, just watch any of my videos on the channel. 9 hours of gameplay that I put out, and you'll see the cutscenes are jarringly different. Now, I didn't play on PC, but I've heard that apparently this also happened on PC. And I don't know why. I mean, it's a very bizarre design choice that the game would run so poorly in cutscenes that are so prevalent and important to the game. But in addition, in this game, there is a home base area where Nawe, the female lead, is basically building up a homestead and recruiting people to help her. And whenever you're in this area, the game actually forces itself to have ray tracing on. And because the ray tracing is forced, the game on PlayStation 5 Pro, even on performance mode, runs lower than 30 frames per second. Therefore, whenever you're at home base, you cringe. It actually bothers your eyes because the rest of the game is gorgeous and home base looks awful. So the cutscenes are jarring, out of place, render poorly, don't have detail, low frame rate, and the homestead is also low frame rate. As I've played, the game has crashed about 3 to 4 times. Not an overabundant amount, but still for a game that's supposed to be a modern AAA game on the best console available, I don't think that the game should be crashing that much. That's just something to of note. Now, when the game opens, you start experiencing the story of Yasuke, who actually isn't called Yasuke yet. He's actually a servant of these 2 priests. And then, of course, we know the story that Nobunaga, the shogun, gets eye of this guy and he wants him to be part of his group. He wants to train him to be a samurai warrior. And so that story begins, and you play about 10 minutes as Yasuke. For some bizarre reason, Yasuke has superpowers. I wish I could explain it. I don't think he has a piece of Eden. He just has superpowers. So he doesn't dodge. He doesn't roll. He doesn't really counter. He blocks and then basically has his charge moves that will break through your opponent's guard and knock them to the ground. And then every once in a while, a special move will charge up. One of his special moves has him teleport across the screen with a slash that makes the screen darken in color. And then when he slashes the enemy, it has a giant red blood splatter. It looks like the movie Sin City, if you've ever seen it. It's a nice artistic style, but it's completely inexplicable. He's supposed to be a samurai. Why does he have superpowers? Anyway, you play one short sequence as Yasuke, and you kind of get a flavor for what he's going to play like, but then the game switches over to Nawe, the female lead, and it goes through the history of how she was the daughter of this guy who basically is trying to keep things afloat and keep his village protected from these invading armies that are coming into Japan, and how Nobunaga is taking over and is kind of the enemy of their people. And then it goes through this story that ties in with one of the pieces of Eden and stuff like that. But in a nutshell, basically, Nawe loses her family and now has to become a shinobi to survive. And so as you start playing with her, the game opens up to this open world area where you're going to try to go to this homestead area, which will be then your home base. And then you're going to go out and try to find people to recruit to the base. For example, you can recruit a blacksmith who eventually can upgrade your gear and things like that. But in addition, you're trying to get intel and try to figure out what's going on in the areas, similar to previous recent Assassin's Creed games where you'll get like the circle of bad people who you need to assassinate, and each one will have little mini missions. Oh, this guy is a fisherman over here. This guy lives over here. Try to figure out intel to see where they're located. Then the game just sends you kind of open to do whatever you want, and you can go after these targets in any real order. I think initially there's 2 major ones and then more open up later on over the course of the game. Important to know. You cannot switch from Nawe to Yasuke. You are stuck as Nawe, and this is chapter 1. Now, you're either going to be doing this open world exploration and story focus, or you can do some of the side content. The side content comes in 2 forms. Number 1, the form of these memories, where you'll perform these like hand symbols, and then you'll remember a memory of the past, and it'll give you the backstory of Nawe, and that backstory allows you to then unlock new abilities and or upgrades after you complete them. These are kind of interesting. They last anywhere from 15 to 30 minutes each. They do add to the story, and they give you upgrades and points that you need, so it's pretty good. The other kind of side content is incredibly boring, incredibly badly designed, and is my major gripe with the game, because even though they're side content, they're actually mandatory, and I'll explain in a second what I mean. The base takeovers. This game has a wide array of bases for you to take over. Sometimes it's just a temple. Well, all you have to do is grab 3 scrolls while some Ronin are walking around and you can easily avoid them. Sometimes it's a full-on base takeover where the base is overrun with dozens of samurai, some of which are low-level wimps, some of which are mid-level who have some armor, and then some of them are the high-end samurai, of which once you eliminate a certain amount, you unlock a special legendary chest that gives you a big reward and a base takeover credit. When you take over a base, you get upgrade points and stuff like that. But the real major reason, at least from my experience, you want to take these bases over is because you get resources. Those resources are then used to upgrade your homestead. Because you see, in Assassin's Creed Shadows, you can't just play the story. That's right. Do you remember back to Valhalla, what happened? How in Assassin's Creed Valhalla, you'd be on a tear in the story and really like it, and then all of a sudden the game would say, stop. You need to go gather more allies, more resources. You have to grind to make progress in the game. And it artificially padded the game to the point where the game became really long and bloated. There was gameplay just for gameplay's sake rather than really adding anything to the narrative or the overall experience of the game. For some inexplicable reason, all these years later, they have followed this exact same formula in Assassin's Creed Shadows. What'll happen is you will complete the story missions that are available on the map, and then at one point you'll go back to the homestead, to which case they'll say, okay, start upgrading it. What do you mean? Well, build your town. Build your town? This is Assassin's Creed. Why am I building a town? Well, that's just the game now. You have to build a town. Oh, how do I do that? Resources. Where do I get resources? Go grind. Oh, okay. So I spent 5 hours grinding. Just going out, taking over certain bases, killing the samurai, got a few legendary pieces of armor. Oh, good. Upgraded my base. This allowed me to unlock the next leg of the story. Went and did some story missions. And admittedly, some of the story missions are much better than others, but some of them are just a bore. There was one mission where you have to eavesdrop on 2 guys talking. You have to try to fool them, and if you don't fool them, you have to fight them. That gives you intel on a guy who wants to give a sake drink to a teenage girl. I'm not kidding. And then after that scene, it's like, oh, okay, you're done. Now the next leg is you have to get a drinking tea kimono, and you have to learn how to have proper etiquette for the next part of the story. Doesn't that just sound riveting? I mean, Assassin's Creed. That's what you think of, learning how to drink Japanese tea. But I rest my case. So you complete that mission, and maybe you do one other, and then you go back to the base, and it says, oh, good for you. You recruited a blacksmith. Now you need to upgrade your base again. For what? Because we told you to. Does it make any sense in the narrative? No, but they want you to. So you have to upgrade your base, but guess what you need to upgrade your base? More resources. Guess how you get them? You got to go grind more. You're in the first few hours of the game, chapter 1, and you have to keep going out and repetitively grinding by taking over these bases. Now, if these bases were small and they had a few enemies in them and it took you 5 minutes to take them over, it wouldn't be a big deal. I kid you not, in the starting area of this game, there are ginormous castles We're talking a giant outer courtyard, a moat, another courtyard, an inner moat, and then a giant tower in the middle. And in order to take it over, you've got to kill all of the samurai. How do you do that? Being stealthy, traversing the rooftops with parkour, not getting detected, scanning the environment, which also makes no sense because you don't have an eagle anymore like you did in the last few games. So how can you scan the environment? I don't know, but you just can. Apparently, Naue also has superpowers. So after you scan the environment, find these samurai, you try to take them down, only to find out, oh, the samurai are too strong. You can't take them down with assassinations. You've got to fight. The problem is Naue isn't designed well for hand-to-hand combat. The whole point of her build is stealth. But then there's enemies you can't take down with stealth. Seems counterproductive and kind of, contradictory, doesn't it? So ultimately what ends up happening, you have to fight a lot, which you don't want to do with the stealth character. It's frustrating and it's not fun. The game also does have some issues with the melee combat and the controls. I'm not really going to go crazy and talk about that because I don't really think that's the reason why anyone quit this game. But ultimately, today was the breaking point. I did such a small amount of story just to be told you need to go grind again. And I went and took over 2 more major bases. I started to do more story and I realized I'm 9 hours into this game. I'm still playing with Naue. There's no signs that I can switch to Yasuke at any point, and I'm bored. I'm really bored. It's not that I'm a little bored. I'm ridiculously bored. Even when I was playing Assassin's Creed Valhalla and it had the required grinding parts, it wasn't really boring. It did feel tedious, but I felt like eventually I'll get back to the parts that I care about. With Assassin's Creed Shadows, they've done nothing to make me care in the first few hours, so why do I want to waste my time grinding in their bases just for the possibility that I would unlock a story mission that possibly I like? It just doesn't make sense. Why would you actually force yourself to do stuff if you don't know that there's a light at the end of the tunnel that you're working towards? And as if to make matters worse, as I was playing on stream today, my viewers notified me, the few of them that had actually played a lot of this game in launch week, that if you keep playing the game, you will eventually switch to Yasuke once you get to Act 2. But then, it's exactly the same thing. Do a little bit of story, have to grind with him. Then go back to story, then take over more bases. And this continues throughout the entirety of the game without fail, without change. It's the same formula from Valhalla. They didn't learn. In fact, I would argue this is the epitome of lazy game development. Take a formula that everyone complained about, change it a little bit for Assassin's Creed Mirage so you can say, oh, there's a game that's like the old games again, but then make another one that's just like Valhalla again. Copy, paste, no effort to change, no effort to innovate, no effort to improve anything, except there's 2 protagonists, but you can't even get to the second one unless you waste time grinding and are bored. This game is completely a ripoff. It's uninspired. It's padded to make it look longer than it should be. It doesn't have good pacing. The graphics have issues. This is a mess. And this is the most modern Assassin's Creed that mainstream media said, oh, it's the best one in 10 years. It's a do not miss game. Get the hell out of here. Ladies and gentlemen, I have absolutely no reason to kiss this game's butt, and I also have no reason to say that it sucks if it doesn't. This game is boring. There is no reason to play it. You will not miss anything if you skip it. There's nothing in here at this point that I'm seeing that even holds a candle to the best Assassin's Creed. It screams lack of effort, lack of talent, lack of care, padding for the sake of saying the game is worth $70 when it's really not. And I'm sorry, if you buy it for $70, you're kind of screwing yourself. And you're actually hurting the games industry. Why? Because a game like this shouldn't be purchased for full price because it's not worth it. At best, maybe get the Ubisoft Plus subscription to pay $20 for a month and try to play through it there. But if we reward game devs like this by buying these games for full price, they will think this is acceptable and keep pumping out repetitive, grindy, boring crap. Why is it that I can remember awesome moments from playthroughs like Assassin's Creed Syndicate or Assassin's Creed Black Flag or hell, the Assassin's Creed 2 trilogy like they were yesterday, even though at this point they were 10 or more years ago? But I couldn't really tell you many memorable moments at all from anything Assassin's Creed recently. It's because the talent has left. These companies are now pumping out games for profits rather than for memories. They're not making pieces of culture, they're making products to be sold and pump out money to keep these companies afloat and line the pockets of those in power. They're not good. And that's the problem. When people say this is the best game in 10 years, well, have you played any Assassin's Creed in the last 10 years, or is this your only one? Because otherwise, I don't know how you could say this is better than, say, Odyssey or Black Flag or anything. They've all been better than this. So why would you have a statement like that? It just doesn't make sense. It baffles the mind that these people actually think this game is good. It is actually insulting to anyone who likes Assassin's Creed to go to play this and say, all right, maybe they made a step in the right direction with Assassin's Creed Mirage. No, that was your distraction to make you think that they were listening. And then they went right back to the old formula, zero effort to make anything better. In fact, it got worse. So Assassin's Creed Shadows, not only is it a game that I don't recommend, I recommend that if you play it, you only get it via the Ubisoft Plus subscription service. If you play it at all, I say it's a skip. Don't waste your time. Do you want to spend over 10 hours grinding with one character, doing repetitive base takeovers just because they don't know how to make a game interesting in the modern day? If they don't know now, they're never going to know. They had a track record of history to learn from. They've had games that were better, and they shied away from them. Instead, they think that wasting your time with grinding repetition is good value. Tell them it's not. Don't buy the game. Skip it. And then when they look at their sales charts and realize the game is their next flop in a line of Ubisoft flops, maybe they'll realize enough of bloat, time for quality, cut the shit. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Darkside Phil. I stopped playing Assassin's Creed Shadows and I recommend you do too. And I hope that you enjoyed this video. See you later.